You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we'll be looking at an incredibly moving story in FAB Facts.
You can expect the expected as the story continues in the Randomiser.
And we dive under the sea into the world below for part 2 of our chat with Kelvin Murray.
Oh, I can't wait. That's all coming up in Pod 140.
Of the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Pod 140.
140!
140. 140.
I can't wait for 180 because then we can do a bullseye intro,
yes, we
can't
can actually do that. We must find a darts player who's a Gerry Anderson fan for the interview for Pod 180.
Oh, you're spot on there. Okay, we'll put a call out now. Podsterons, can you find a darts player? I don't mean somebody down the pub who would play darts if they were allowed down at the moment, but a famous darts player who's an Anderson fan. We would love to speak to them. Email us podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Now, if you're a first-time listener, we don't normally put out particularly specific calls for sportsmen to come on to the podcast, but that's a special occasion. Now, I'm Jamie Anderson. That over there is, what's your name again?
It's still Richard James.
Oh, that's the one, yeah. And over there, is he playing a recorder?
I think he is. And he's got a lovely stovepipe hat and a sort of a frock coat and check trousers.
Oh, I see what he's doing.
Yes. Anyway, that's Chris Dale, of course.
It is indeed. Chris will be here later on with his randomiser, in which he chooses a random episode of a Gerry Anderson show, watches along, and tells you his thoughts. But also, coming up on this podcast are the following other sections, narrated to you now by Richard James.
I thought you'd never ask. Coming up a little later on, we have the second part of Jamie's interview with Scotland's Troy Tempest, Kelvin Murray.
Name.
Isn't that right? We've also, of course, got some newsy news from the world of Gerry Anderson.
Can't wait.
We've got Chris Dale's amazing randomiser coming up a little later on. And we've got FAB Facts in a moment. And, of course, the most important part of the show, you. Our lovely Podsterons have been emailing us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. They've been hashtagging us on Twitter, #GerryAndersonPodcast, tagging me, Richard N. James, him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and him over there in the stovepipe hat, Chris Dalek. And also they've been posting on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons. Phew.
God, that's quite enough of that, I think.
Isn't it just?
You probably need to lie down after all that, don't you?
Yeah, why? Have you got something in mind while I go and lie down?
Yeah, well, I thought we could do FAB Facts.
Oh, I really do need to lie down.
Now, time for this week's FAB Facts.
FAB Facts, where Richard lies down, I take a book of FAB Facts, flick through the book, Richard lethargically says fab, I stop flicking through the book, and then I read you a FAB Fact from the page where we stop flicking. Are you ready, Richard, for your lying down lethargic fab?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, here we go, don't strain yourself.
Fab. That was that.
That really was one of the most lethargic fabs we've ever had.
I'm an actor.
And your lethargic fabbing has taken us into the mid-1960s.
Okay.
So let me talk to you about real-world inspiration.
All right, let me just get comfy.
Yeah. Do you want another pillow there?
No, I'm fine. Carry on.
Okay. Many of the most popular Anderson episodes and scenes were at least in part inspired by real-life events. You know this, don't you, Richard? I mean, the most obvious example is the finale of the Thunderbirds episode Trapped in the Sky and the rescue of the Fire Flash by International Rescue Elevator Cars. It's the image of an aircraft unable to land due to a problem with its landing gear, stuck with Dad since his days stationed at Manston Airfield during his national service. And you see the Spitfire coming into land without its landing gear down. The runway controller warned the pilot that he was about to crash, and luckily he was able to accelerate and circle the airfield again until he could make a successful landing. And that was probably the most notable Thunderbirds episode to be based on real-life events.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the only one. Because, of course, we all remember the fan favourite, that time when the giant alligators went on a rampage. No, that wasn't a real one. No, not that one.
In
fact, I think in a previous Fab Fact we said that was borrowed from, was it an Avengers episode, I think?
I think you're right, yes.
Yeah, anyway, you'll have to scroll back and find that one. Okay, that one's not true. However, one of the other most popular episodes of Thunderbirds, involving an almost equally unlikely event, had its roots in real life too.
Right.
Do you know which one?
I shudder to think.
Well, you wouldn't really want anything, would you, with these disasters going on? But
no, exactly.
The episode we're talking about here is Terror in New York City, which is the one where they decide to move the Empire State Building.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that they moved the Empire State Building, but that scenario was actually inspired by a story that Dad saw in a newspaper. And I quote, I read that a large store in Japan was in the way of a big road widening scheme, but because of its huge value as a going concern, it was not demolished, but instead jacked up and moved inch by inch to a new site. The movement of the store was so slow that customers continued to shop there throughout the operation.
Wow. Gosh, that's
must
really
have been
scary.
Very cool at the time.
Terrifying, though.
I mean, building moves like that are more frequent now. In fact, there was a great video recently of I think a lighthouse being moved by rail.
It's normally on the coast, isn't it? Where it's sort of eroding. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
But there you go, there's a great one there. Now, the thing about Dad at Manston, I'm sure he told me that several times they'd seen belly flop landings as well, where the planes have to, burn off all their fuel and come in and land without landing gear. But that may be... Right. He'd been told about that by his brother Lionel during RAF training, possibly. Yeah. I mean, certainly, I've got a picture of Lionel on the airfield next to a plane that had tipped over during landing.
Right.
I think they put the brakes on and front weighted. It just tipped right over and ended up upside down.
Yeah.
I mean, real life aviation stories and origins like that are the source of some of the most exciting science fiction storytelling in the Anderson universe, I think.
Yeah, absolutely right. Very good.
It's like that time that you joined that pyromaniac cult, Richard, and that went on to inspire The Fire Within Parts 1 and 2 on Space Precinct.
Oh, honestly, I joined one pyromaniac cult, and that's all I ever hear about.
I know.
People just won't let that go. That was like 25 years ago. Actually, I didn't. It wasn't me. It was Took, wasn't it?
Yes,
it was Took. You've got to blame Officer Took.
Yeah, fine, all right. Mary Woodvine, it's all your fault. Anyway, if you have some other interesting references or even parallels where there are news stories in real life around the time of an Anderson story being written that you've spotted, do let us know. podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. We'd be interested to hear them, whether or not they are officially acknowledged with inspiring the stories. We look forward to your emails, but for now, that brings us to the end of this week's Moving Fact!
That's fantastic.
Very moving.
That's really scary. I can't imagine what it must take. How can you lift a building with the foundations and everything? I don't understand even how you do that.
Dig down,
keep it
scoop
open.
it up. I mean, I'm no building moving expert, but maybe we need to find one. There's another interview
and what pod
request.
could he be on? Yes, exactly, he or she.
We'll have to work that one out. But okay, fine. So we want a darts player for 180.
Yeah, and some sort of civil engineer.
Yes, some sort of architect, civil engineer for something about terror in New York City. So we look forward to receiving your suggestions about that.
Now, there's an interesting point, though, isn't it? With the new stuff that you're producing, Jamie, the Firestorm and Terrorhawks and other things that we can't mention, are you still, as your dad did, taking inspiration from real-life events that are happening around us today and over the last period of time?
Absolutely. In fact, we were having a story discussion on one of the projects which has a real kind of through line back to events of the last couple of years. Not that. Don't worry, not that.
Good, because I don't want to talk about that.
More generally, the way discourse goes. Perhaps that's about as much of a hint as I can tell you. But yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's always rooted in stuff that's real because real stuff is cool.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose we feel more connected to it when we see those stories, don't we? Because we've experienced something similar to it, and I suppose we can relate to it a bit easier.
Yeah, I think so. I think it just feels less like science fantasy and more like science fiction when it's rooted in some sort of reality.
Indeed. Now, people have been getting in touch, which is a great thing because we love it when people email us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, don't we?
We love it.
Nothing finer. Now, Ian Thompson, for example, says, "Hi, Mr. A and Mr. J. I just wanted to say a massive thank you for the Stephen Critchlow interview on Pod 138.
Oh, pleasure. Well,
Of all the interviews that I've listened to on all the other podcasts, this is the one that I felt a great affinity with, being of a close age group to Stephen, whilst driving to work listening to him speak about his younger years, and Jamie asking about his TV shows that he watched, and his listing of all the shows that I watched, even down to Irwin Allen's Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, led me loudly to shout out that this could be me. Completely wasted because I was on my own in the car, but nonetheless, this could almost be a mirror image of myself, apart from the occupation, of course. I absolutely love the interview. Well done to whoever, I suspect Jamie, for getting this one done." Ian goes on, "As I'm not on Facebook and Twitter, could you please pass on my thanks to him and tell him, don't let anyone berate him for watching stuff from your youth. The older we get, the more nostalgic we become, especially in the trying times that we're all in currently. Many thanks for the entertainment you both bring to us weekly, and I even smile when Richard rarely mentions that TV show he was in." What was it again, says Ian? Crossroads? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I was in Crossroads. Only kidding, buddy. He says, "All the best and stay safe. Thunderbird 2 returning back to base, FAB." Thank you very much, Ian. That's a good point, isn't it, about the older we get, the more we love watching stuff from our youth, for that lovely, warm, nostalgic feeling. A big part of Gerry Anderson shows, of course, as we know, people looking back, as well as those that are discovering it for the first time.
absolutely. It's all about the nostalgia. I mean, there's a lot of what we do here. There's stuff coming in the future, but let's all enjoy what's there for the past. Nobody can take that away.
Quite right. Now, someone calling themselves Gerry says, "Hello, podcast purveyors. I must say how much I'm enjoying the podcast and re-immersing myself in the worlds of Gerry Anderson. At the moment, I'm wading through Space Precinct and thoroughly enjoying myself. I didn't realise how many talented actors it had. And Richard James."
My
Gerry
headphones
says,
almost fell off there. I was laughing so much.
There we are. Says, "I love to hear the banter with your stooge, Jamie. Thanks a lot," from Gerry. So that's very nice. Glad you're enjoying Space Precinct. Ed Dutra has been in touch again, which is always nice to hear from Ed. Says, "Hello, Jamie and Richard. Podcast 138's FAB Fact kicked some long dormant brain cells back into place. I suddenly remembered the Mike Douglas show mentioned, where Buster Crabbe stumped Martin Landau and Barbara Bain with his questions about force of life, and the cringe moment when they couldn't answer. But be fair, 46 years on, and I can't do any better."
Fair enough.
That is fair enough.
Good observation, that.
He goes on, "For many years, I felt that Force of Life was the most disappointing episode of Series 1. This was not because it was a bad episode. It was doomed to fail only because of its unfortunate placement as Episode 4 in the local broadcast order. Preceded by special effects Tour de Force, Breakaway, Matter of Life and Death, and Dragon's Domain, this bottle show had no spacecraft or strange new planetary environs to dazzle me, other than the laser-scarred Zorif with glowing eyes scene.
Terrifying.
Nothing really stood out," he says. "It was just also underwhelming." In the years since that first viewing, I was able to see the episode in the context of the series as a whole, and I now appreciate the tense atmosphere and wonderful weirdness of this episode, which has grown to be one of my favourites. Finally, says Ed, "Is it wrong that I feel bad for Chris Dale? Outside of the randomizer, it feels like he's constantly relegated to the kids' table while the grown-ups are working." He says, "I really enjoy the podcast, over 137 episodes in, and still feels as fresh as Pod 1. Regards, Ed." That's very. I don't think Chris feels like that, does he?
I don't think so. I mean, he's too busy over there messing around pretending to be Patrick Troughton, to be honest. But
yes, he's doing a very good job, isn't it? What was that? Yeah, something about his giddy aunt. But yes, that's nice, isn't it? Revisiting an episode. That's a really good point that, he sort of saw it bookended by perhaps some more flashy, showier episodes of Space 1999, so didn't think much to it, but looking back at it now in the context of the whole series as we know it, sees it as something else entirely different.
That's like somebody coming to the podcast at Pod 50 or Pod 100 and, then experiencing a standard episode rather than a special one.
Sorry, are there special ones?
Pod 100 and Pod 50 were special,
I see what you mean. Yes. And you're saying they can't all be special?
Well, they can't all be that special. That's what I'm saying.
Daniel Dudley got in touch to say, just wondering if, considering it's Supermarination's 60th birthday, you and Network Distributing were going to release Blu-rays of classic shows that haven't been released yet, maybe even digitally colouring in the black and white shows for a new generation to enjoy. Thanks, Daniel. What do you think of that, Jamie?
Sounds like a lovely idea, but I couldn't possibly comment.
Oh, it's one of those, is it? Right. So do get in touch. I'll read out your emails next time. It's very easy. podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. And thanks for all those so far.
Yes. Oh, gosh. We're on to the next bit then, aren't we, if you've stopped reading out emails?
Is there a next bit?
Yes, it's the Gerry Anderson News.
Hooray!
It is the Gerry Anderson...
Now, what you mean to say is newsy news, news, news.
Well, that's what I was hoping you just to join that first bit with. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started with this. It's the Gerry Anderson News, and this week, well, Terrorhawks fans, as we know very well by now, there are lots of you around. If you missed out on the rather special Record Store Day release of the Terrorhawks theme and variations and audio story on rather sexy orange vinyl, then we've managed to get the last few over to the Gerry Anderson store, and those are live to order now.
Exciting.
It's a really nice collectible, very limited edition worldwide, and I know lots of you wanted to get out to Record Store Day this year, or last year I should say, but unfortunately because of circumstances beyond our control, it was cancelled and sort of fractured into various other dates. So it's a really lovely set, great cover by Chris Thompson, and the audio story features a little cameo by Dad, which is rather lovely.
Wow.
If you would like some bargains, don't forget that the eBay clearance store is now open. Just search for Anderson Entertainment on eBay and you'll find a load of lines that are coming to an end, and you can grab bargains there.
Nice.
What's this on my news list? It looks like I can't really read it. Oh, yes. It looked like DCI Lunchbox, who sounds like a strange policeman. But in fact, it was Parker unboxing, BCS unboxing. And you may have already seen it, but AC did a rather lovely unboxing video of Parker. So once again, if you are tempted to grab one of those, then you can see everything that's inside the box and how stunning Parker looks in the flesh, or in the plastic, I suppose.
Oh, that sounds really good.
And also, the Eagle edition of the Century 21 Tech Talk is out now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV. Pop along there. And may I just suggest that if you're not already subscribed to the Gerry Anderson newsletter, that you do so. If you go onto the store or the main site, gerryanderson.co.uk, you'll find a sign up there, because there is some rather exciting news coming in the next few weeks, which you won't want to miss out on.
Oh, yeah.
I shall say no more. I think that brings us to the end of this week's Gerry Anderson News.
That was the news. That was the news.
I hope you don't mind me saying, Richard, but this week you sounded a bit sarcastic in your responses. Are you distracted by something, or?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Sarcastic? Me? Jamie, how long have we known each other?
Too long.
I think you might be right.
Well, in fact, it's... how long is it? 26 years?
Oh, well, I suppose, yeah. I suppose it is.
Technically.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going by technical stuff. It's more
So that
recent
means-
for our...
Yeah. I've known you as long as I've known my wife.
Yeah.
That's a frightening thought.
For all of us, I think. Yes.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to go lie down again. No, I won't.
Before you do, can we have some more messages from Podsterons, perhaps?
Yes, of course. Let's head on over to our Facebook group. Facebook.com/groups/Podsterons is where you will find many of our listeners luxuriating in the worlds of their own making. It's very easy to join in. Just answer a few questions and you'll be let in, and you can join in too. They post memes, discuss favourite episodes and so on. For example, Hugh Porter has posted, I recently watched the complete series of UFO, and Hugh asked, what is your favourite character and why? AC, Andrew Clements, replied, I always loved Freeman. The loyalty to his friend and superior is so badass. Ian Riley said Sid. For its time, it was leaps ahead and had AI. It was just a great idea. Real computers have always been a letdown after watching the Anderverse for 50 years. Good point, isn't it? Johan Huth has posted that moment when the podcast is so excellently timed that when you get to the spectrum is green part of the intro, the set of traffic lights you are sitting at turns green.
Well, we do what we can to make your life easier, don't we? That was quite difficult to arrange, that particular one. But
it was, wasn't it? Yeah, we had to go through all sorts of channels to get that done, didn't we? I don't think we could do it again, could we? I think that's just a one-off. Alex Patrick said, I just noticed something, like I usually do. Sophia Miles equals S Miles equals Smiles. Now she, of course, was one of our very earliest interviewees in pod, 4, 5, 3,
pod
6?
1 and 2, Richard.
Wow, really?
Well,
That
actually,
was our first.
No, because if I remember correctly, it was a very long time ago.
It was. It
pod
really
1 was a sort of intro, wasn't it? And then pod 2 and 3 was Sophia, maybe?
Good Lord.
I can't even remember. Not terrible.
Yeah, long time ago. Paul Hyder has posted, it's been said before, but this is such a lovely group. I've been a member since nearly the beginning, and I've not seen one nasty, sarcastic or aggressive post from any members. It's such a pleasure and privilege to belong. Good on you all. Well,
That's what we like to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, they are a lovely bunch of people. So do pop over and join in the fun. And in the meantime, of course, don't forget to subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on right now. Why don't you leave a review as soon as this podcast is over and tell the world what you think of us? And if you really like us, just copy the link and tweet it to all your social media profiles and tell your friends to have a listen to, and they might well enjoy it.
And if they don't, then they're wrong.
Well, what sort of friends are they?
Exactly.
Really?
At least it's a good friend filter, because if they don't like the podcast, then they're not worth having around.
Unfollow, block, unfollow.
Obviously, we don't mean that.
No, of course not.
Richard, would you like to hear a bit more interview stuff, or have you got anything else you'd like to share beforehand?
No, I'd love to hear. Is this with Kelvin Murray?
It is. It's part 2
Yes,
with
please.
Scotland's very own Troy Tempest, Kelvin Murray, talking about all things expeditionary, undersea, his fascination with space and the potential for that. And I think I asked him which vehicle he'd like to have a go in if he could only have a trip in one Gerry Anderson vehicle one time only.
Can I make a guess now?
You can.
It's got to be Thunderbird 2.
Interesting you said that, especially as an underwater man. But let's see. Here's part 2 with Kelvin Murray. But the technical fascination, did that continue with the sort of the eagles and the movement through space and episodes about black holes and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, because I guess it was all. So much of it was unknown, and it was introducing me to things that I didn't really know much about, but it was really interesting and fascinating. So I don't ever remember, thinking, how can eagles actually fly? But I was always fascinated with the shape of the cockpit, and it was like, so are those actual windows underneath as well, and things. So again, it wasn't denying it and seeing it as anything. It was like, oh right, okay, so it does that, and it does this, and it was much. It was all very believable to me. Although I knew it was a program, it was believable fiction. That makes sense.
No, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people, especially people who went into space sciences and that kind of stuff, they all say it was the believability, and they got a lot of stuff right that has come true to some degree, although not all of it. Certainly not flares on the moon. Not yet, anyway. What about Terrorhawks, Kelvin? You mentioned calling your grandmother Zelda, which I'm sure can be forgiven because everybody did that. But that was a very different show, particularly if you contrast it to Space 1999, but even to any of the other shows like Thunderbirds and Stingray. So how did that sit with you?
Yeah, well, again, I think, Terrorhawks was on the cusp of me moving away from sort of like children's programs and so on. So I can remember it, and I can remember Zelda and her sort of like, crazy hair and that kind of thing wandering around in the fog. But but I don't really. I think it was at that age where I just I might have watched it as a bit of entertainment, but it didn't have the same kind of thing for my mind. I think I was probably thinking of other things at that point.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and that does happen. But thankfully, by that point, everything was so firmly planted in your mind in terms of technology and the fascination and things like Stingray and Thunderbird 4 that your path was potentially set. So, how just talk me through a sort of brief history of kind of career-wise, going from a kid who loves Stingray to now, as I say, being the Scottish Troy Tempest to some degree.
I'm so keeping that.
Please do. Yeah, you should get it on a t-shirt.
Yeah. So I basically trained as a diver, but as a recreational diver. And as soon as I took my first breath underwater, I remember it in the pool up in Aberdeen, of just being, this is it, this is me, this is absolutely what I'm about. And so I very quickly went from being recreational diver to getting myself up to instructor level. And then I was like, right, what can I do next with it? What can I do in being underwater? And so that went to commercial diving, but not commercial diving as in oil and gas, but more scientific, media, archaeological stuff that was more exploratory, or it had a different meaning to it, rather than just being a dope on a rope, for want of a better word. And then at the same time, I was also working quite a lot in wildlife conservation and interested in that, and because I was always a nature kid. And then at some point in my career, I also worked as a survival and marine instructor, teaching people how to get out of sinking ships and ditched helicopters and burning oil rigs and things like that. Nice. Okay. And all of these things all came together when I was saying to myself, what do I really want to do with my diving? I needed a big challenge, so I applied to become diving officer with the British Antarctic Survey. And I got that position. I lived in the Antarctic for a year and a half, running the UK's scientific diving program down there. And then just prior to being deployed south, I met a guy called Tim Soper, who is the son of Tony Soper, the wildlife broadcaster, sort of another legend alongside David Attenborough. And he was working in expedition tourism, expedition cruises. And he said, when you come out of British Antarctic Survey, why don't you come and join us? We're building a new ship and we'll need a polar diver. So a few weeks, actually, after me coming home from a year and a half in the Antarctic, I was training to be deployed in the Arctic. So learning how to shoot in case we met any unpleasant wildlife, and then I went up to Svalbard, Greenland, Canadian Arctic, and I started working up there as a diver, diving, shooting footage, editing it together, presenting it to the guests on board so they could explore underwater vicariously. Nice. And I was just diving on my own with a big HD camera set and the places that had never been dived before, and really, really far north, very remote places and so on. So that was all very exciting. And then over the years, doing more diving and doing more expedition leadership. Then I got into sort of the technical management side of things, and now I'm in sort of operational management and product development. But now with working with EOS Expeditions, I'm now working more and more with submersibles, which over the years have become a much more accessible thing. Yeah. The technology's moved on and so on. And so you can possibly guess the excitement that I had to be on the DSSV pressure drop in 2019 as we were deploying the world's first commercially certified full ocean depth submersible to go and dive the bottom of Challenger Deep multiple times. And part of my job there was to assist a man called Captain Don Walsh, who was the first person or the first team to go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench in the 60 years previously. So I was living a little boy's dream,
Awesome.
So yeah, so not exactly brief and not exactly a straight line, but that's pretty much how I ended up where I am now.
That's a pretty cool selection. I mean, you've sort of ticked the boxes of Stingray and of international rescue there with your survivalist stuff. Is there anything within that sort of comes close to the nearest thing to an international rescue moment or the nearest thing to a Stingray moment in real life?
Well, so far we haven't been attacked by any mysterious underwater beings.
That's reassuring.
But I have been involved in a number of big, big from our perspective of rescues and situations where we're having to get people out of sticky situations and people have been injured and that kind of thing. So, and I've also been involved in massive logistical projects where, so for example, we took the largest passenger vessel that's ever made a transit of the Northwest Passage over the top of Canada with an attendant icebreaker. And so I was the expedition leader on the icebreaker, and we had 2 helicopters, 15, 16 boats, kayaks, a dive team, ROVs, all sorts of toys to look after the guests on the big ship, things like that. So it was a huge sort of logistical, exercise and how we make all these different things happen. So but from a very small team of people, I mean, I think at the time there was only 8 or 9 of us in the company making this, massive project hand, looking after 1,000 people at a time in the Arctic. So, I mean, I guess there are parallels to be had. How much at the time I was thinking about, this is exactly what Troy Tempest would have done, or this is what Scott Tracy would have done, that kind of thing. But it is very easy to see how a small group of people, a small group of the right people with the right mindset and the right technology can do some pretty incredible things. So,
awesome.
Yeah, it's a very neat parallel.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad to hear it. And it sounds like you may have made or be making the move from Troy Tempest to Commander Shaw, possibly, as you go into more kind of operational stuff, less gruff, less grumpy.
Well, I don't know if my colleagues would agree with that. They might already think I'm well beyond Commander Shaw.
Fair enough. If you could choose one member from Stingray, one member of WASP from Stingray to work on any operation with you in any role, which member of WASP do you think you would choose? I mean, it's easy to say, oh, well, obviously you'd pick Troy Tempest because he's the hero Aquanaut and he'd get you out of scrapes and stuff. But maybe from your experience point of view, you'd rather have somebody else. And you can say Marina if you like as well.
Yeah, well, funny enough, yes, it is very easy to go Troy Tempest because he is the archetypal, sort of cool, calm, collected, put him into any sort of situation. He's another Captain Kirk, isn't he? Or something like that. But funny enough, the other thing that struck me with that question was Marina, because of the importance of working with the locals and working with the indigenous population where you go.
That's a great answer.
And we, the amount of work that we do up in the Canadian Arctic or in Greenland and the other parts of Canada on the Pacific side and so on, where it is so important to tap into the knowledge of the people that live there and work there and thrive there. But also they are the landowners, if you so to speak. They're the landlords, and you have to be respectful visitors. And so working with the locals is extremely important, and fostering good relations with them, which is exactly what Troy Tempest or the Scottish Troy Tempest would do with Marina. When I go and start invading some undersea kingdom.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend his exact method of getting in with the locals in that particular way, Kelvin. But yeah, no, I love that answer. That is an excellent answer. There's something to me with an interest or a fascination, but very little knowledge of going into space or going deep into the ocean. I find something quite terrifying about that prospect, because between you and either the certain death from extreme pressure or the certain death from extreme lack of pressure, if you're in space, all that stands between that and death is technology. Mm-hmm. And really, relatively, it's a thin on a kind of ocean scale bit of technology between you and all that stuff. Is that something that is in the back of your mind at all times, or are you such a bold heroic Troy, that the excitement and stuff and the interest washes all that away. Because I always find that those characters who are willing to do that kind of stuff in the TV shows, they automatically get some hero points. So is that sort of arrogance and stupidity in those characters, or is it, belief and full understanding of the technology you're using?
No, I don't think it's arrogance and stupidity, because that generally what gets people killed. I think the explorer Roald Amundsen put it pretty well. Bear in mind, this was the guy, first person at the South Pole. He flew over the North Pole. He charted the route to the Northwest Passage. He did incredible things, and he's quoted as saying, adventure is just bad planning. And you can go out there, you can say, I want to have a wonderful adventure, or I would like to have, a nice, well-planned expedition that I'm going to come home and be able to tell everyone about,
Yeah.
And Ernest Shackleton, said the same thing. Better to be a live donkey than a dead lion, and knowing when to step away from something. And so, I've been in it myself, and so as a diver, I am essentially, wearing my life support system.
Yeah,
and you can drown in a bowl of soup. So,
yes,
being in that environment, you have to have a full understanding of the gear, what it does, how it works, what can go wrong, how to get out of that sort of situation, but also your own limitations as a diver or as a pilot or as a And I think it's something that you, throughout any of these sort of training processes, or you're getting more and more familiar with equipment or that kind of thing, is that you pick up motor skills. Things become almost second nature or automatic, and that sometimes seems very alien to people when they say, "Oh my, I could never dive under polar ice and that kind of thing," or "I could never, go in a submersible down the blah blah blah," that kind of thing. But you look at driving a car. When you start driving a car, you have no idea what you're doing. But then soon you're going to be belting down the motorway at whatever speed, and you're going to be interpreting all this information that's flying at you and dealing with that, and you're doing things automatically. So I think humans have a great capacity in the right circumstances to integrate well with these kind of things. I think it's when they get a bit sure of themselves, and like you say, that sort of arrogance is what leads to them getting into a pickle, and not just them in a pickle, but other people.
Everybody, yeah. So, and then you have to go and rescue them. But you've never been in a situation, down in the depths, when that moment crosses your mind of a sort of a what if, or a sense of the power around you, essentially.
Oh, completely. And you are. Well, I am certainly aware of what's going on around me and how this could go pear-shaped. So but it's kind of reassuring in a way that, as an empowering thing for yourself, or as an understanding for yourself that I have to do this right. This is there's no other way out of it. I remember a long time ago when I started doing what I'm doing. I made a promise to my mum. I said, I'm always coming back. I promise I'll come home. Yeah. So, and I have been in situations where it's like, I've seen things going wrong. And this is mostly about scuba diving that I'm talking about. I'm seeing either the conditions, the visibility, the current, maybe there's been wildlife issues, that kind of thing. It's like, I need to get myself out of here now. This is an incident pit. Things are developing and I could get into trouble. Rather than just blasé. But that just comes from experience, And I think driving a car is a really good metaphor for a lot of people to relate to.
Also, it does all sound very heroic and cool. It's a great balance to have that. I have a question for you. Speaking of cool, you are allowed for one day to take out a single Anderson vehicle. You have to choose one from Stingray, a Terrorfish, Thunderbird 4, or Thunderbird 3, just to throw a wild card in there. Only one. You'll never have an option to travel in any of those vehicles ever again. Which one do you choose and why?
3.
Oh, you're going to go into space? You're going to go against all of your career and training and interests?
No, but I'm also interested in space. And
okay.
For a while, I've been consulting and advising on a project based here in the UK about building a commercial astronaut facility. I think called Blue Abyss, because there are many parallels between. Although it's an extreme pressure versus very little pressure, there are a lot of parallels between aquanauts and astronauts.
Yeah.
And again, it's this idea of people being placed in placed in an extreme environment and working outside their comfort zone and using technology to survive. So, but it's more, for me personally, it's more realistic that I will end up in a sub in very deep ocean than it will ever be in a spacecraft. So if I had the opportunity to jump in a spacecraft, I would do it tomorrow. In the next half hour. Anything.
All right. Anything can happen in the next half hour. I'll put in a call to Jeff Tracy now and see if we can get you flying Thunderbird 3, Kelvin. Kelvin, you are the perfect example of how science fiction can potentially play a part in inspiring people to do really cool stuff and live quite a cool life. If people want to find out more about what you're doing, follow you online, that kind of thing, is there any easy way they can do that? Twitter, websites, etc.?
Yeah, you can look up the company website, first of all, which is eos.com, EYOS. EOS.com is our company, and it's about to go through a big revamp, so there'll be a new website coming out soon, and then there's all the social media attached to that. And then my own Instagram outlet, so to speak, is at 0 degrees K, which of course my name being Kelvin,
nice.
There's always a temperature association. 0
Kelvin, excellent. Fantastic. Well, I highly recommend people follow that. Are they going to see things from the depths and tech and stuff, or is it more kittens and kids watching Thunderbirds?
No, it's mostly work stuff. It's not really kids watching. But there's definitely going to be some Thunderbird stuff up there soon.
All right, I'm glad to hear it.
A bit of Stingray.
Quite right too. Kelvin, also known as the Scottish Troy Tempest, you've been awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our chat, and hopefully we'll catch up with you again soon. Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Jamie. I've really, really enjoyed this, and it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. And thank you for keeping this all going. Oh, great pleasure. Great pleasure. So strangely, in line possibly with this week's Randomiser, part 2 of Terrorhawks Expect the Unexpected. The unexpected when it comes to which vehicle Kelvin would like to take a trip in. So you weren't that far off, were you? No, I got close, didn't I? Pretty close. But yes, that was quite unexpected. Well, Kelvin, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our chat. Really enjoyed it. And I think Kelvin's going to keep in touch because there's some cool stuff happening this year and next, hopefully, all things COVID allowing. Great. So, yes, fantastic guest. Lovely bit of variety there. And thanks for taking the time, Kelvin. Now, next week, Richard James. Oh, yes. We are sticking with the Terrorhawks theme, whether you like it or not. Because next week, it's Terrorhawks composer Richard Harvey. Oh, that'll be great. What a lovely chat Richard is as well. So, yes, I had a great chat with Richard, who normally, at this point in the year, would be out in Thailand. That's where he winters out there. Does he? But currently he's in the UK because of the current global situation. And we had a lovely couple of, almost 2 hours, I think our chat went on for. So I think the fully edited version will come in at 3 parts, certainly at least 2. So one thing we can say for sure is that next week will be part 1 of my chat with Richard Harvey. Really worthwhile. And if you're a fan of Griffin, the band that he was in, then he may have some interesting things to say for you there. Ooh, great. I've not heard of them, I must be frank. Not heard of Griffin. No, quite niche, I think. What sort of stuff are we talking? Is it ballads, nice sort of light music? Rock? Is that a fair term? I think Hawkwind? Possibly, yeah. Okay. I'm not really an expert, and Richard will probably tell me off for calling it that, but yeah. Anyway, brilliant. Really lovely man, and fascinating chat about his career, actually, and then getting into the world of Terrorhawks and beyond. So, Oh, and also we get into Firestorm in later parts too, and the process for composing there. Nice. Anyway, right. Yes. What's next? What's next? Well, in the meantime, shall I go over to Twitter and see what people have been saying about us? Or would you rather not know? No, do it. Find the most offensive one and let me know.
No, you're right. You're on pretty safe ground. Justin Fisher, for example, has tweeted, I've recently found the Gerry Anderson podcast, now on Pod 35, and each week on Mondays. Should have caught up by early March, as it's all I listen to while working. But he says, I'm a bit behind on newsy news. Well, that's the thing you would be if you were still on Pod 35, wouldn't you?
That's the problem.
But the great thing is, though, if you're listening for the first time to all those early pods and you hear the news, well, that's probably happened, isn't it? So you can then go and listen to whatever the news was about, or buy whatever the news was about, or watch whatever the news was about. Couldn't you?
Yeah, except for the case of limited edition stuff, which has been and gone. But otherwise, it just means that you don't have to wait for anything.
Yeah, it's all there for you. Exactly. Lost in Transition. Stephen Critchlow is every one of us when it comes to fandom. He's a great example of how age should never stifle enjoyment. So this is going back to our interview with Stephen on a couple of pods ago.
138, yeah.
138, there you go. David Rout says, this is the first one I've listened to the week it went out. Started listening in May 2020, and I made up a lot of ground.
Wow, welcome along. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. What are you doing for the rest of the time, though? Because I should imagine, you would listen to one every few days to try and catch up with us. But now you've got to wait a whole week. What else are you doing
with your life, man?
That's
right, what you're saying?
Exactly. Anyway, that's all for now. But don't forget, you can hashtag us Gerry Anderson Podcast, tag me, Richard and James, him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and him over there. Well, he's wearing some sort of big fur coat now. The hat's come off, I think.
Yeah,
nice sort of shapeless
animal that came from.
Coat. Yeah. Chris Dalek, who'll be here in just a moment.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like right now, really. Because
why not?
For this week's Randomiser, it was chosen last week because it's a two-parter. Yeah. Last week, Chris did Terrorhawks Expect the Unexpected Part 1. So that means that now, automatically, he's going to do Terrorhawks Expect the Unexpected Part 2.
Well, you'd think so.
Most peculiar. All right, Chris, hang your coat up there and over to you.
Last time on the Randomiser.
An alien force has seized Mars. Their intention? To capture and plunder Earth. An elite defense unit, the Terrorhawks, with a secret base in a remote area of South America and equipped with the most sophisticated fighting machines yet devised by man, is ready to engage the new Martians. Their first attack has already been repelled, but using her mysterious powers, alien android Zelda has taken Terrahawk commander Dr. Neinstein hostage, and he is now aboard her spaceship. He orders his Terrahawk gunship to open fire and destroy the alien craft, even though he is aboard. Terrahawk's Lieutenant Hero is confronted with an impossible decision.
What would you do, 101?
It's not for us to make decisions.
You're right, of course. I must make the decision. 101, open fire.
And now the conclusion.
And I do like that the recap just ends with the ship blowing up. I don't like this.
Tiger! Thank God you're all right.
Oh, thank God. Well done, hero. It's the G word. Don't often hear that in a puppet show.
You mean, what am I doing here on Earth? Well, I had this theory, and it's relatively complicated. But I figured that if their ship was destroyed, their power to hold me would also be destroyed.
And you were right.
You just pulled that out of your backside, didn't you, Doctor?
We are rejoining back.
I would really think that was
back on board.
Yes, sir.
Even on the table.
Just give me a few minutes.
Even with a very complicated theory. Oh, and here we go. Yes, last week we lost Zeroid number 13. We are now holding a funeral for him, and it's one of the saddest things, I think, in any Anderson production. These robots, these little chunks of metal and plastic, honouring one of their fallen comrades.
Pipes? Fire!
It's such a perfect image. Again, it so establishes the Zeroids as characters.
I don't understand. I mean, when we get back, they'll make another number 13, won't they?
You know your trouble, 35. You've got no art.
And I do look at Zeroid 35 there, and I do feel just a bit guilty that in the Big Finish audio stories, I actually killed that character to be replaced with the female Zeroid 35. But as we heard from that dialogue there, I don't think he would care that he got killed. They would just build another one, wouldn't they? It also establishes Zero as someone slightly apart from his men in terms of his emotions and his feelings and his responses to things. He's not reacting in a robotish way.
Yes, Sergeant Major. I wanted to see you.
And we just had a glimpse of a different Neinstein puppet there. We're now back to the hideous one that we were stuck with for last week.
You are a machine.
So I gather some parts of this episode were reshot at some point.
You are Zero. You are absolute zero. Zilch. In future, if I say jump, you jump. Well, don't just sit there. Say something.
Yes, Doctor.
Again, we have this awful... The characters being so deadly serious in the early episodes. I think particularly having the narrator on the recap there. I know we need a recap. We need someone to explain what's going on. But I think the narrator is just...
Artie?
Yes.
Is just slightly too silly. If it had been one of the regular characters, maybe Zelda herself, that would have been fine. But the narrator is a certain level of cheese that... that coupled with the seriousness of what's going on, or supposedly going on, it just...
Okay, folks, let's raise our glasses.
But here we are at the opposite end of the spectrum. We're having a party.
Encounter with the new Martians.
New Martians again.
E1. CIG. Champagne is go.
Oh, dear.
Actually, sir, his champagne is gone. And my head is spinning.
Dr. Neinstein.
Yes, Hero?
Zelda.
She's on her way back.
But we're having a party. With booze and everything.
In this universe of ours is impossible. You should have known that, Doctor. When I lost my power to control matter, you were automatically returned to Earth. And I to Mars.
There was a brief insert shot of Mary Falconer there looking absolutely stoned.
Your hostility, I return to Earth in peace.
Why would blowing up her ship return Zelda to Mars? I mean, maybe she's... I guess that
stations
sometimes comes under the Zelda reclaims her own thing, but I don't see any way that blowing up her ship with a Tiger on it would return Tiger to Earth.
She's hostile. If she gets any closer, just let her have it.
10-10.
Also seeing the puppets in their party gear here just emphasises how massive their heads are and how small their arms are. When Tiger's got his hand up to his ear there, it looks a bit silly.
Doctor, Zelda's ship is standing off, just out of range of our guns. All right, Hero. We're on a 1040 down here. I'm going to the Terrahawk. Keep your eyes peeled and expect the unexpected.
10-10.
And, of course, this wasn't the first two-parter that we had in the Anderson world, but
I bring
it's one of the first. It's also one of the first where the second episode of the series follows directly on from the first.
So that I may confer with your commander.
We had that with Stingray, of course, and Captain Scarlet.
It's revealed to no one.
But they weren't like part 2 of the previous episode. This one is marked as part 2, but again, it doesn't feel like a continuation so much as just, here's another unrelated adventure, here's a bit more stuff.
I believe you were friendly, but then you attacked us.
I didn't attack.
But this is nice.
Defended myself. One of your robots attacked me.
Zelda sowing the seeds of doubt.
That number 13 did not fire first. I have never disobeyed an order.
A jump cut to what looks like an unrelated shot of Zero for the second half of that scene there.
Tiger's crazy.
I know.
Wants to give that cat the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Some of my best friends are androids.
Hawkwing, you have it.
That's a fairly, I don't know, specious thing to say there, Hawkeye, considering that you do actually work with a whole army of robots who are all absolutely lovable and perfect. What, you're saying Sergeant Major Zero is not, you don't have much time for him?
Katie, Hawkeye, you know the drill. Circle the landing area. If Zelda makes one hostile move, blast her.
10-10.
Oh yeah, because it worked so well last time.
Same place, huh? Don't you think she's deceiving you?
Well, someone is deceiving me.
Oh, don't distrust Zero. It's interesting looking at the first episode, knowing what the show eventually became, the running themes and threads that would be weaved through the series, what they choose to introduce here. And I think it's a good idea to introduce the Tiger Zero friction here. But
Katie, but I certainly know what I've got for her if there's any kind of trouble.
Ooh. Yeah, certain ideas are introduced that just don't go anywhere. It's also interesting...
What do you think Zelda really has in store for us?
Well, as I always say...
Expect the unexpected.
Even Zero's fed up with him. Yeah, it's interesting what the show chooses to introduce.
What's in store for our little earthlings, don't we?
We've had Zelda in the first half, and although we saw a cube near the end of part 1, we now have a whole army of them to throw at the Terrorhawks. And although the cubes are rather iconic, probably mostly due to the end titles, it's like introducing those as Zelda's first thing that she's going to throw against them. I mean, what about the Zeefs? The Zeefs, I would say, are far more important to the show overall than the cubes, and yet it's the cubes that get thrown out first. We're now introducing Battle Tank as well, which looks very nice. Battle Tank always looks perfect. You do wonder, why weren't you using this in part 1?
Zero?
Aside from holding some stuff back for part 2.
Hawk, okay?
So?
Hawkwing, what is Zelda's 1020? Well, she's about 30 miles south. She'll be landing in a few minutes. 1010.
We're going to a full 1040, Tiger. Shotgun. Do you feel like a piggyback?
Stand by to receive boarders.
Oh, they're going to do it again this week. Okay. So that's 2 episodes they used it in, but I don't remember it being used much more after this. They must have been really proud of this idea if we've had it in both parts of the 2-parter.
Here she comes.
Oh, Mary is looking almost as bad as Tiger by this point. She looks very stiff and lifeless. That's a lovely shot, actually, of Zelda's central hub ship landing, and nice look up the underside of it.
But I have won your confidence.
You have not won our confidence yet. But for the moment, we're prepared to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Very wise.
I do actually like this idea of, giving her the benefit of the doubt. Possibly there's a piece to be brokered here.
No matter. I will now perform a small miracle for you.
Ooh.
Look to the west, Doctor. The land is bright.
Katie. Hawkeye. Stand by.
1010.
What did you say? Right, the deal's off. I'm nuking you all.
Yeah, not the best thing to say on an open channel, Mary. What are we building to here?
What's she doing?
Don't trust her, sir.
The spaceship is glowing. And... well, this sounds harmless and innocent.
Tiger! She'll kill us all!
Hawkwing, ram that ship.
And a different shot of... a different tiger puppet used there in that shot. This is the one that would later become the most commonly seen. So I don't know if this is a reshoot or if they had multiple tiger puppets available when they made this episode, and for some reason they chose to use the uglier one of the two. Ah, Zelda's built them a road. How,
Hawkwing?
How thoughtful.
10.
It is a miracle.
Well, yeah, but, you know, on a sliding scale of miracles, it's not that impressive.
Just imagine what other benefits I could bring to your planet.
Like railways and airports.
I take it I have safe conduct.
Yes. Yes, Elder, you have my word.
You've given us a road and we're grateful. You can go now.
It's been a misunderstanding.
Are you sure, Tiger?
Zelda, you are clear to leave.
Thank you, Commander.
Hero, did you get that? Yes, I got that, Doctor. We will keep well out of range. 1010.
And I think the hero puppet looks quite nice as well, actually, although there's a slightly feminine touch to him that I think it might actually be the hair. He looks like he's got 80s woman's hair.
Mandalay.
Road to Mandalay?
It's an old song.
Sung by grandfather?
I didn't grandfather. I had a test tube. I'm a clone, remember?
Tiger, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean...
Mary, why don't we take my old...
I'm getting whiplashed.
The new highway.
This conversation makes no sense.
You, Zero. My roller. My Rolls Royce. Get it?
This is an odd moment where it feels like Tiger and Mary haven't actually known each other that long. Considering that Tiger has a Rolls Royce secreted in the front of Battlehawk and...
You didn't tell me.
You didn't tell her?
Well, I don't tell you everything.
I wouldn't tell you about the talking car that will later go on to prove absolutely invaluable through the rest of the series. Why would I tell you about that?
Totally restored. A few alterations, a new power plant, new interior, and all the latest technology. It can think and speak for itself.
Like Zero?
Not like Zero. This machine has breeding.
I do like this idea as well.
That rather coarse whistle indicated that my services were required.
Tiger isn't against the idea of technology or even sentient technology. He just doesn't like Zero.
Certainly. Your voice print has been checked, and the doors are now unlocked. Welcome aboard, sir.
Yep, so we're now introducing Hudson as another feature of the series. Holding him back for part 2. Again, I think one of the more successful elements of the series, Hudson.
Heuristic universal driver with sensory and orbital navigation.
Oh, thank you.
Hudson for short.
Electronics by Hero?
Exactly.
What's happened to your neck, Mary? It seems to have been swallowed up by your uniform.
There's to be an obstruction ahead, sir.
What I find slightly
What are they?
I don't...
odd about this scene, but rather charming overall throughout the whole series, is Hudson doesn't appear to have any weapons.
Let's get out of here.
You know, Fab 1...
I'm taking over.
As you wish, sir.
...is loaded with machine guns and flamethrowers and rocket launchers and all sorts of terrible things. Hudson doesn't appear to have any of that stuff. He just sort of gets by on class and cool.
What's happening?
Force field.
Also an idea that didn't last much beyond the early episodes. Tiger actually driving Hudson.
That was obvious.
We're trapped.
That's also obvious. Try the phaser, Hudson. Although theory is...
He does have a weapon. And it doesn't work. Could be why we never saw it again.
The force field is impenetrable.
I'm afraid so.
Yep, the...
Give me a satellite link.
Army of cubes have surrounded Hudson, set up a force field.
This is a 1090. We're trapped in what I believe to be an impenetrable force field. Stand by for instructions. In the meantime, make no attempt to rescue us.
I promise you, Doctor, that I will not attempt to rescue you.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Your tomb, and be sure of it. You will both die.
Again, I don't remember the cubes making force fields between themselves after this episode. Maybe it did happen, but
I've been talking to Hawkeye.
It's not a feature that they made much use of.
Through the top of the force field.
Your fate is sealed. Goodbye, Doctor.
I hate to say it.
Then I will. Zero was right. It's ironic, isn't it? He's the only one who can save us.
By increasing his mass?
Yeah. He can make himself as heavy as a black hole. If he hit one of these posts, he could break the field.
But we can't call him.
An increasing mass was something that, again, I don't think would actually work in real life, but it's something in this show that...
Well, I told him that if...
It's so off the wall as an idea that it kind of works.
Have him taken apart.
Oh, charming. Thank you, Tiger.
I could save Mary and the Doctor, but I will not disobey an order.
Oh.
Not disobey an order.
Go on.
I definitely will not disobey an order. The heck I won't.
Yay. That's it. Zero off to the rescue. I don't know where the rest of the Zeroids are at times like this. It seems like they might be useful, but...
Guy, do you see what I see?
I sure do. He's increasing his mass. I just hope he's a good pitcher. He could smash that car to pieces.
More lovely music here.
Zero.
Keep rolling, baby.
One hit completely breaks the force field, shatters all the cubes.
Fantastic, Sergeant Major. Just fantastic.
It was nothing, Mom. Nothing.
You're right.
Tiger.
Joke. It was just my little joke.
Extremely little, Ensign.
Oh. We're on our way home now, I guess. So that army of 20 cubes.
I think Hudson is absolutely magnificent.
You just left them to roam free, do you?
Hudson. I do believe you're blushing.
No, madam. It's my natural colour.
I guess because we need time to introduce this.
Chameleon.
I wonder what they actually did with this road that Zelda created afterwards. I would have thought they'd have to forbid anyone to use the cursed road.
White and blue. Truly British, Hudson. Truly British.
Meanwhile, the cubes that the Terrorhawks have let go are destroying a small town somewhere.
All right, Zero. Up on your perch.
Different tiger puppet again.
Today...
And he's back to his ugly self.
Once again, you started to think for yourself.
Well, yes, sir, but...
When are you going to realize that you were made and programmed by a superior being?
With due respect, sir, weren't you?
Oh, and that's a cool line.
Sergeant Major...
But it does make Tiger look very unlikable. And the fact that his teeth are all but falling out of his mouth in this horrible puppet. I hate this early Tiger puppet. Ugh. Doesn't help either.
Thanks, Zero.
I'm off to the dentist.
Thanks, Zero.
Yay.
Wonders never cease.
Happy Zero.
Believe it. I can't believe it. I'm over the moon. I'm right over the moon.
Oh, I love you, Windsor Davies. I miss you. And now we're introducing Zelda's cryogenic store. Again, without much explanation.
Friends, my first encounters with the Terrorhawks have failed. But now I am going to give you your chance. SRAM.
Oh, here he comes.
Of planet felony. I am going to bring you out of suspension.
And this is a very freaky shot to end the episode on. The reveal of SRAM. Although it's interesting if you look at the order in which things are introduced in this show. Among the Martian characters, we have Zelda and then SRAM, before either Youngstar or Sistar. And I don't know why. Oh, that is a very freaky shot of SRAM. Yeah, I don't know why we weren't introduced to Youngstar or Sistar. You would think as fairly prominent characters, they would want them to be showcased here, but apparently not. Anyway, that was Expect the Unexpected Part 2, which, was more of the same, really. Again, not the show's finest hour by any means. Focused a bit more on the Tiger and Zero relationship, which is rather nice. But I can see why people had trouble with the show when it first started. The puppets are... I'm sure the puppeteers are doing the best that they could, but the puppets are just a bit too ugly to really generate much sympathy. Our sympathies are much more with the Zeroids, and ironically with Zelda herself. I kind of like the idea that she just came to Earth, gave them a free road, and then cleared off. That was her evil plan for the week. Hopefully, next time we see her, she'll have a slightly better plan up her sleeve.
I love a bit of Terrorhawks, although it didn't really find its feet there, did it? Not in part 1 and 2. It was kind of a bit straight-laced, a bit serious. Didn't quite find its sort of panto comic quality. So, but it got there in the end.
Right.
It got there in the end.
Yeah, was it always heading there? Was that always the intention?
I don't believe
or did they?
No, I think they wrote up the comedy fairly early on because it just wasn't quite working tone-wise.
I see. Yeah.
But it's a shame, isn't it? Especially these days because, all streaming telly particularly has got a kind of 3-episode hook window. Most streaming things, you'll watch the first one and think, I'll give the second one a go. And then it's like,
That's right.
All right, I'll try the third one. And by the third one, really, it's got to have grabbed you. For you to carry on. And so everyone's got into that mentality. But with Terrorhawks, it really doesn't, I don't think, grab you in the first 3 or 4 or even 5. You've got to get to episode 6 before it kind of finds its feet. So it's an interesting one. But despite that, like we said, it did well on Amazon Prime. So
all good.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris, thank you for giving us our intro to Terrorhawks there.
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
Next week we'll be back to a random one.
Oh, yeah, look, he's just getting into that. What is that? It's a blue police box thing. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gone.
That's strange.
Very strange. Now,
Hi, Chris.
Jamie, tell us everything you know about the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel.
Not a lot, actually. It seems youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV. It's full of things, including title sequences and primers and FAB Facts and motion comics and trailers and making ofs, and there's hundreds of videos there, and I think we've had approximately 6,500,000 views across the channel, something like that. How's that?
That is fantastic. Well, I headed over there just this week to try and pick up a few comments on some previous podcasts, and some of them are quite nice, so I thought I'd read them out. Yeah, well, there's a couple here. Keith Gooch said, another great episode of the Gerry Anderson podcast with all the usual banter between Richard and Jamie. Have to agree that, Jamie, we should have no more Gerry Anderson limericks, as they were not great. No.
Hey, I should mention, by the way, the rather marvellous David Tremont from Weta sent me a couple of limericks, but unfortunately they were not fit for broadcast, as it turns out.
Were they even anything to do with Gerry Anderson or the podcast?
Oh yeah. There was a torchy one,
okay. Oh, right.
And they were both Gerry Anderson, but no, neither were suitable for broadcast. Not on a family-friendly show, anyway. Thanks, David.
Keith continued, enjoyed the Stephen Critchlow interview, as I've enjoyed his work with Big Finish, and I enjoyed Chris Dale's Randomiser review of the new Captain Scarlet episode Heist. Keep up the good work. Ian Dealey, in a similar vein, said, great to hear Stephen Critchlow in this week's podcast. I liked his role in the Furnitureland adverts, and nice to have new Captain Scarlet back on the Randomiser too. So there we go. So Stephen went down great guns, didn't he?
Did,
we'd love to know what you thought of Kelvin Murray over the last couple of weeks, so do leave your comments and your thoughts, and I'll read some of those out next time too.
Oh, great. I look forward to that. Well, is that it for this episode of the Gerry Anderson podcast?
I mean, you say, is that it? Like, that's not enough.
No, all right, fine. That was plenty. Please stop, Richard. We've got to let these people get on with their lives.
Yeah.
Sorry for holding you up, Podsteron, but if you want to write into us, please do podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, or you can tweet us, me, at I'm Jamie Anderson, him at Richard N. James, or the guy that's just disappeared in the blue police box at Chris Dalek. And or use the hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast, and we'll try to read your messages out and answer your questions in due course. I mean, you keep sending them in, which is brilliant, and without you, the podcast will be half the length it is, and only a quarter as interesting, so thank you.
It's true. It'd be like we would just be talking in a big echoey room, wouldn't it?
Just having a chat to each other. Yeah. Thank God it's not that. Anyway, that's the end of Gerry Anderson Podcast Pod 140. Thank you for listening. We'll be in your ears next week in Pod 141.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Richard.
Yes.
Are you a fan of bubble wrap?
Do you know, I find it a bit... it's the whole sort of fingernails down the... No, I mean... Oh, don't. No.
Do you not find it a bit de-stressing?
Oh God, no! But there are whole YouTube videos, aren't there, of people popping this stuff. What is that? There's a name for it, and people whispering into microphones.
Oh, ASMR.
Right.
Yes.
But I don't find it pleasant at all.
I was going to whisper at you then.
Thank you for that. No.
Would you like some Gerry Anderson ASMR, Richard?
No, I wouldn't. Don't.
Okay, well, I will just give you this parting gift of rather than individually popping the bubble wrap, just taking a whole lump and giving it a good old twist.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.